So what we're going to do today is we're going to watch a video that Dave Ramsey did where one of his callers called in and said, should I pay off my mortgage early or invest? Now, this is a common thing with Dave Ramsey, pay off mortgage or invest. So let's dive into this, and what I'll do is I'll just give my opinion as we go through this. Let's get started.
Sam's with us in Wisconsin. Hi, Sam. Welcome to the Dave Ramsey Show.
Hey, Dave. Thanks for having me. I appreciate everything that you guys are doing.
Thank you. How can I help?
So, a little bit of a unique situation. My wife and I are on our second home that we purchased from her parents, and her dad so graciously allowed us to purchase it from him, and he is our bank, and it is a 0% interest land contract.
Good for his dad. His dad is being the bank. Actually, his father-in-law is being the bank. Sorry, shameless plug.
That he is actually covering the taxes on. So we're in a great situation. But my question for you today, as we are looking at really starting to invest, I'm trying to weigh what would be a better return on our money, whether that would be to simply pay off our 0% interest mortgage as fast as we can, or to do a little bit of both of investing and while paying off our mortgage.
We suggest when you're debt-free, everything but the mortgage, that your next step is to have an emergency fund of 3 to 6 months of expenses. We call that baby step 3.
So I would agree completely. You know, if people don't have an emergency fund, you're setting yourself up to fail. I don't care who's holding the mortgage. I don't care how cheap it is. And I don't care how little you're spending on all your debts. If you don't have an emergency fund, you're one step away from disaster. So I would agree with that.
Do you have an emergency fund?
We do, but I know that it's not as much as we should have.
Okay. The first thing before we talk about any of this other stuff is it should be 3 to 6 months of household expenses in liquid cash that you don't touch for any reason. This is not I'm saving up for Christmas or vacation or a house or anything else. This is an emergency fund. Okay? Then once you've done that, then we do baby steps 4, 5, and 6 at the same time, but in that order of priority. 4 is 15% of your household income going into retirement.
So first off, Dave Ramsey says this all the time. It's one of his baby steps. 15% of your household income going to retirement. Now, Dave and I definitely disagree when it comes to where that money should go. When you're putting money in a retirement account, Dave just says the simplest thing, put it into a Roth IRA, and sometimes he uses traditionals, but he says put 15% into mutual funds. I hate mutual funds. Okay, I used to sell them when I was a financial advisor. I think they're awful. They're expensive. Yes, there's low fee or no fee or all sorts of different funds you can do, you know, Vanguard and all these other ones that are very inexpensive, but I still don't like them. And there's all of a sudden, you know, another factor that I got to start asking Dave is, how come that's all you recommend? Are you getting paid somewhere on the back end? This is how I've been trained to think. So I disagree with him always going direct to retirement. But for his audience, the people he's speaking to, maybe it's not so bad. So that would be the first thing I disagree on, is that you go directly into retirement accounts. Retirement accounts, you're giving up your most valuable dollars today in return for a future use of that money. Now, that means you just gave up control of your money. And if you need that money back for an opportunity of a lifetime, you're going to be penalized. And if it's not a Roth, you're going to be taxed. So I typically don't suggest that, but to each their own.
And that would be matching 401ks, Roth IRAs, you know, traditionals, whatever, along those lines. And you're filling up stuff in good mutual funds there. And what's your household income?
Household income is about $75,000 combined a year.
Okay. All right. And so, you know, we're talking about $9,000 a year, roughly, is 15% of your income. Everything above that then leaves us for baby step 5, which is kids' college. Do you have any kids that you need to save for college?
We have one so far. We're in the first years of building our family, so yeah.
Okay. I would start something. It doesn't have to be dramatic, but I would start something towards the kids' college, $100 a month or something, in a good mutual fund. And
there you go again, in a good mutual fund. Everything to Dave is buy term, invest the difference, and mutual funds. it really makes me ask a lot more questions. But obviously people don't even question it because they just don't know, all the specifics. So when he talks about saving for college, it's a very important thing, but not all kids are going to go to school. So when he talks about saving for college, a lot of times he brings up 529 plans. I hate 529 plans because you're, again, giving up control. And I'm all about you taking back control of your money. So first thing he's saying, put 15% to retirement accounts. To me, you're giving up control of your money. Is there an argument to be made there? Yeah, no one person's needs and goals are the same. But I think to just assume that everybody's the same in Dave Ramsey's baby step world, he is assuming that everybody should just do what he tells them to do. And that, to me, is misleading. I think putting money into a retirement account is one of the primary things, and then secondarily, planning for college. What if your kid doesn't go to college? What if your kid actually starts a business that becomes the next Fortune 100 company? Like maybe that was their destiny. Maybe they wanted to go out and be a professional athlete. Maybe they wanted to do something that doesn't involve college. So if you put all this money that he's saying into these college savings plans, if indeed it's a 529 plan, you're again giving up control and you're pigeonholing what that money can be used. Because if in a 529 you don't use that money for one of the children's college expenses, you're penalized 10% and taxed on that money as well. So I just think putting everybody in a square box is something that Dave Ramsey does. I always refer to it as Dave Ramsey. Listen, what he does is very needed. Okay, he helps people go from a bird with a broken wing. He puts you in his cage, okay? Takes you through the baby steps, feeds you. When your wing is better, you're the bird and you just want to go out and fly. You want to be free. He doesn't want to let you out of the cage. Once Dave's got you in his little baby steps cage, he assumes that you fit into his little square box and you can never leave. I think the door should be opened and you should fly free. Let's move on.
And that's going to be, that's going to be a blast, and you get that rolling. And then everything else I'm going to throw towards the mortgage until it's paid off. I do want to get this mortgage paid off as fast as possible, regardless of the 0% interest rate. And here's the reason. It's your largest payment, and as a matter of fact, it's your only payment. And all the data tells us from the 10,000 millionaires that we surveyed that one of the keys to becoming a millionaire is getting your home paid off and keeping it paid off.
Okay, hold on a second. Totally agree with what Dave's saying here. Most people's mortgage is their biggest debt. It's their biggest liability. It's the biggest payment. So focusing monies after his, early baby steps, whether we agree or disagree or agree to disagree, he's now talking about a mortgage and paying this off. Let's reverse back to the beginning. Do you remember this mortgage was a 0% interest mortgage given to them by his father-in-law, his wife's father. So now that complicates things a little bit. I mean, there's a lot of factors there, but I just want you to focus on one thing, 0% interest. So now all of a sudden, where we talk about paying mortgages off to take back the velocity of the money, so you're not paying 80 to 85% of every payment to interest as in a normal mortgage, every dollar they're paying toward this mortgage held by his father-in-law, his wife's father, is going to principal. I just want to make sure we're clear on this. So Dave is saying now, after we've met all these other baby steps, let's take all the excess money and let's pay down a 0% mortgage. I disagree wholeheartedly, 100%. I think that is one of the dumbest, most foolish things you could do with that excess money. That isn't really going to put you in a better place because that money could go work for these people in a better way. And I'm not talking about mutual funds. They could do a lot of other things to make that money work at a higher rate. Heck, what's more than zero? Everything. They could put the money in any account making more than zero and they'd be ahead. And then they could take the interest earned or the profits earned and they could roll that back in to pay the mortgage off. Let me talk to you about that for just 1 second. Now, let's just say they took the money that they would use to pay off this mortgage. And over 12 months, let's just assume it's $1,000. They saved that in just a segregated account, or maybe one of the specially designed and engineered whole life policies that we talk about for infinite banking. I know that would just rub Dave wrong. That's why I wanted to bring that out. But if they did that, that money would then be built up. Now, what they could do is they could take that $12,000 and they could then put that money out there. They could be their own bank. They could lend that money. Okay, in lending, they could make, I don't know, 10, 12% if they did it in a first secured. That's what I make on mine. I'm not saying that's going to be the same for them, and I'm not saying this is right for everybody, but let's just use that. So their 12 grand that they saved just that year might go out there and earn a much higher interest rate while being the bank, by lending the money, by doing anything. Then they can take the interest earned on that money working for them, and then they could chunk down the mortgage with that. They could take money that was made, I don't want to say out of thin air, but their money working for them made money, and they could take that made money and pay the mortgage down. Doesn't that seem more logical? Let's see what Dave says.
Okay.
And because it frees up cash. Now, you are in more of a danger zone than you feel like you're in with this land contract. Land contracts are very dangerous. Here's why.
So now Dave Ramsey's a land contract expert, okay? Let me just clarify something. What Dave Ramsey's saying here is, again, putting you in a little square box. My suggestion to this is it isn't that dangerous. Get yourself a good attorney. Make sure that the contract, the note, and all the things surrounded by this private mortgage are done properly, and so that you don't have any loopholes. So if you ever got divorced with your wife, well, let's make sure we protect that. If the father-in-law ever passes away a little too early or graduates too early, goes on to heaven. Now, all of a sudden, there's a plan in place for what's going to happen to that mortgage. Maybe that mortgage is paid to a trust. Maybe that mortgage is paid to the surviving spouse. Maybe the mortgage is just wiped out upon death. You see, Dave Ramsey just assumes, oh, it's dangerous. It's only dangerous if you don't do the due diligence. If you don't do the easy work, he would call it hard work, of hiring an attorney to review this. Oh, why would I hire an attorney? It's my father-in-law. No one's out there to make new friends right now. Family sometimes can be your worst enemy in this stuff. Just get an attorney and have the attorney review it and make sure that it's right for you and your wife. That's what I would say to these people. But Dave Ramsey, it's dangerous. Okay, Dave.
Here's why. Anything that happens to your father-in-law or mother-in-law whose name this property is in, and they get sued for that, could be a lien placed on the property that you feel like you own, that you do not own.
So he's right there. So here's a way to do it. Have the property be owned by a trust, a living trust, a family trust, whatever kind of trust you just deem as necessary or needed for this. Once the trust owns it, the trust has language that says, upon death, this XYZ happens. You get to control what happens in the future, even if you're not here. Like, I know this is above Dave Ramsey's pay grade because he just assumes everything fits into baby steps in his little cage that he keeps you in. But you know what? This is not complicated or difficult stuff. Just get yourself a good attorney and you'd be all set.
If they are driving down the road and hit a patch of ice and they were driving reasonably and someone gets killed in the car wreck and sues them for $500 million and wins, that lien is going to be placed on the property that you thought you owned because it's not in your name. If they screw off and go,
sorry to keep stopping. Dave Ramsey's right. If you don't protect it, if you don't plan for the unforeseen things that I'm mentioning. But again, it's not hard to plan. It doesn't take a lot of money to set these up, and it doesn't even take a lot of time to hire the right attorney that can do these things. He just keeps this stuff super high level, and I respect him for that. But let's just peel the onion just half the way and understand that these aren't difficult problems to overcome. So I still disagree with paying off a 0% mortgage, especially a private mortgage held by your father-in-law. Just protect yourself.
Run up a big IRS debt, and there's an IRS lien placed on them. It's going to be on that property that they own that you have a contract to buy. Contract for deed is a dangerous ownership methodology. Point being, you could pay $100,000 down on it.
Right, and mutual funds aren't dangerous at all. Actually, let me ask you all a question. Have any of you looked at your 401k statements, your IRA statements that Dave Ramsey told you to put money into a mutual fund? Have you looked at those recently? How are you feeling about that? This is October 2022, just for reference point. You're probably down over 20%. Oh, but that's not dangerous. What? You just lost 20% and you're going to lose more. And Dave says, oh, these are dangerous. Put your money in safe mutual funds. Dude, you got it backwards.
Point being, you could pay $100,000 down on this principal, and 20 minutes before you pay it off, a lien gets slapped on there, and you don't end up with the property that you just paid off. And even if he wanted to, I mean, it could be something that's out of his control. I'm not suggesting he's a crook. Worst case scenario is he's a crook, but I'm not suggesting that. But, I mean, life happens here, and you can really get in a mess. So I strongly suggest that you guys get that property put into your name, and you convert this from a land contract to a mortgage on a mortgage or a deed of trust, depending on how your state functions, with a lien on a piece of property that you own.
See, okay, so he sort of brought it back full circle and told them, hey, you just got to do this, this, and this, and that'll help you. Why didn't we start with that? Why didn't we say maybe this is the first thing you should do instead of coming out and saying, oh, that's dangerous? Sometimes maybe he just wasn't thinking straight. Maybe he hasn't had his coffee, but it looks like he's got a big Dave Ramsey mug next to him, so there's probably coffee in there. Like, wake up, Dave. Put the cart in front of the horse, or put the horse in front of the cart. Sometimes he gets things a little twisted.
So the deed transfers to you, and you still owe him under the exact same terms the mortgage. And if it costs a little bit of paperwork money to get the lawyer to do that, you pay the bill and get it put into your name before you start reducing this principal.
Best advice he gave in the entire video was the very end, which should have been one of the first things he talked about when he was suggesting that they pay off a 0% mortgage because it's dangerous. I completely disagree with a lot of what he says in this video, but again, we can agree to disagree. So for all of you out there that love or don't like Dave Ramsey, then you should really subscribe to this channel and also click the little alert so that you're notified every time I do another video about Dave Ramsey. We'll see you next time.